I want to talk about the most interesting rock in Team Fortress 2. And no, it's not this one that kind of looks like a penis. It is, in fact, this rock formation over here. And what makes... Oh, apologies. What makes this so interesting to me is that I have seen a number of free-to-plays attempting to make this jump. However, that jump is impossible. Unless you're playing Scout and you can double jump. But you can't jump directly from this smaller rock up to this ledge, even though if you don't have a good understanding of the movement in Team Fortress 2, if you're a new player, you might assume that this is supposed to be a stepping stone to get up here. In fact, the way that you have to do it is to get onto this rock first, because this rock has a sloped surface, which with momentum allows you to climb it very easily. But if you don't have momentum, if you just try and jump up, you just sort of slide back off, as you can see, even if you crouch jump. You need momentum in order to basically surf up this rock, and then you can walk over there. And what's so interesting about this to me is that this exemplifies Team Fortress 2's gameplay, right? At first, this is fairly obtuse game design, right? You don't want to have a signal to the player that they misinterpret. So if a new player comes along, sees this, and misinterprets it as, oh, okay, I have to jump up here, and then I have to jump up here, you know, and that's not possible. I've seen new players attempt this jump over and over again, just failing. And that's a miserable experience for that player. And the actual way you're supposed to do it is extremely unclear. You know, this is not intuitive movement if you're not already quite familiar with the source engine. It involves, you know, air strafing without holding W, which is not an intuitive mechanic for someone who isn't familiar with the source engine. Surfing, understanding that you can use momentum to get up this sloped rock face, is not intuitive at all. And there's nothing in the game that will teach you about this mechanic. It's simply an emergent behavior of the character controller in the source engine. And I think this is emblematic of Team Fortress 2's approach to game design in general, which is to say that a lot of the mechanics in this game are very obtuse and not clearly explained to new players at all. But this fact, the fact that these mechanics are kind of invisible, you kind of have to figure them out yourself, and they are emergent facts of the gameplay systems rather than intentionally constructed systems by the developers, adds an incredible amount of depth to the game. Because, for example, being able to do this quickly is going to allow you to navigate this area so much faster than someone who doesn't know how to do that. In fact, there's an even faster way to do it. You can actually sort of surf without ever landing on the top of this directly onto that rock. I'll give it a try, but it's a little tricky. So this adds, there you go, that's how it works. It adds a lot of depth to the game, right? Even something as simple as just simply traversing from a lower area to high ground has enough depth that it requires you to have at least some understanding of fairly complex movement mechanics that would not be intuitive to a new player and are never explained in the game. And so this type of thing is prevalent throughout all of TF2. You know, there are so many mechanics and systems that are just never explained to new players, and you have to sort of work them out yourself, I suppose. Just like this rock. And once you understand them and internalize them, they become intuitive. And then, you know, if you know about that, you're likely to understand, okay, this rock is also a sloped surface, so even though it doesn't look like I should be able to climb up here, if I have some momentum, I can jump up with a crouch jump, right? If I don't have momentum, the crouch jump doesn't work because I can't slide up there. But now you have transferable knowledge. You've understood something about the movement controller in the source engine, and you now have a gameplay advantage over people who do not understand that. This is the general ideology behind Team Fortress 2's game design. It doesn't explain things clearly. And this creates an insane skill gap, an insane skill curve, an insane learning curve between the new players who just haven't shoved their head against a wall over and over again enough to figure this out, or aren't familiar with other games that use similar mechanics or something like that, compared to experienced players who just know this stuff intuitively. And it, you know, it has positives and it has negatives. It's in the negative side is if I was a new player and I did this over and over again and couldn't get up there, I would feel miserable, and I might just stop playing the game. If I came across enough barriers like this, where it's like, why can everyone else seemingly do this obvious mechanic, which I just don't understand how to do? Nothing in the game is teaching me how to do it. I'm just going to stop playing TF2, right? So it does create a negative experience for new players. On the other hand, the players that do stick around, it creates a level of depth and skill expression that just doesn't exist in other video games. Because of all of these obtuse mechanics that aren't explained and emergent properties of, the game engine and the game design in general, there is a level of depth in Team Fortress 2 that just couldn't arise if it was authored. No one would actually author that. No one would go to that extent of detailing. It becomes like, I don't know if Valve did this on purpose, right? I have no way of knowing. Who knows if Valve knew you could do this? If Valve intentionally sloped the face of this rock in order to make this jump possible, or if Valve are not particularly familiar with the mechanics of the Source engine and thought that you would have to walk around the long way and use the stairs, even though you can actually, I'm pretty sure, jump up like. There's somewhere where you can sort of get stuck on a pixel here and jump straight up. I don't. Oh, there it is. I sort of did it. Okay, well, I'll give up on that. You guys can figure that out yourselves. You could load up this map and try that yourselves. But this aspect of TF2, it's weird. It puts off new players, but those that stick around get access to a level of depth that you couldn't have if the game wasn't designed like this. And I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. TF2's player numbers are dwindling. They have been dwindling for a long time. And stuff like this sort of inaccessibility that piles onto each other, all of these tiny little things, being able to jump up this rock is not particularly important in most situations, but there are a million rocks, there are a million examples of things like that which will give you a small advantage, and they compound and compound until the skill gap and knowledge gap between experienced players and new players is so high that anyone who is even slightly knowledgeable about the game has the potential to just pub stomp, because all of this stuff is never told to new players, right? And that's why pub stomping is very easy. But when you actually play competitive, if you're a pub stomper like me, you might think you're good at the game, but if you actually play competitive against good players, you will rapidly realize that you are not that good at the game. Pub stomping is just actually quite easy because of factors like this. That's pretty much it. I just thought it was interesting that there's a singular rock that exemplifies the core ideology behind TF2's game design and allows you to understand the positives and negatives to that decision.